Welcome back to the Renaissance Humanism podcast. In today's episode, I will be discussing why the West is in perpetual crisis. Western nations are predominantly nations that are part of the European Union, North America, and other nations linked to the liberal democracies and Western cultures, particularly what constitutes European political and culturally, is much larger than Europe itself. The West has been moving in a perpetual crisis since the 2008 financial crash due to the political leadership, even the general public not being willing to use power in the geopolitical sense of power due to four main reasons: the legacy of colonialism, the unfounded belief that the West is evil and the United States is an even empire, society and political leaders not accepting the true nature of international politics and geopolitics, Europe being in a state of war since the fall of the Western Roman Empire from 476 AD until 1945. According to Konstantin Kissinger, a British and Russian author, writer, and podcaster, it is the application and use of power that is used to serve your citizens. The United States, the world's greatest superpower, consumes five times as many resources as any other nation and people on this planet. This success is because by the protection and economic security created by the United States post World War II order, which has led to prosperity throughout the West until present times. European nations from the late 15th century until the collapse of the old colonial powers, Spain and Portugal in the early 19th century, and the withdrawal of France and the British from their colonial territories in the mid 20th century. The British Empire officially ended with the handover of Hong Kong to the People's Republic of China in 1997, marking the end of the British as an empire. With European nations and the colonial legacy, there is a robust, ingrained reluctance to interfere in African countries outright and to interfere in other nations' policies, at the very least directly. However, it must be stated that political situations is more complicated. For instance, the French have held a quasi-empire in North Africa due to the influence of over governments using the currency the African franc, the French language as a common language, and the recent coup d'etat in Nigeria in 2023 is marking the end of French influence in that region. The French, the British, and the Germans are reluctant to handle the European migrant crisis, which has been ongoing since 2013 due to the Arab Spring from 2010 to 2019. Uh, this year, a net inflow of migrants is at least 1,200,000 people. There's a misplaced view within European leadership, particularly in Germany, which is responsible for two world wars, the deaths of nearly 100 million people, including 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, that they need to atone for their sins, and this is why Germany has opened its borders to migrants. Under the leadership of its former Chancellor Angela Merkel, in 2015 the nation had 1 million migrants, and as of 2022 that figure is now 2.7 million, though this data may not be accurate for people not being counted. There is a view pushed by the enemies of democracy, freedom, and the American will system created after the Second World War that the United States is a force for evil in the world. Furthermore, this viewpoint is being driven by the world becoming geopolitically multipolar. What this means in politics and international relations terminology is that the world is now becoming home to more than one superpower. In practical terms, it's more likely to be regional powers, with each region having one or more great power dominating the politics within the area and competing over power and influence. There is a drive by two factors: the industrialization and prosperity that the United States created, which enabled nations who did not have access to resources to have security of global oceans, which enabled free trade and for countries to begin industrialization and specialization. Two great examples of specialization are the Republic of Taiwan, which creates 90% of global semiconductor chips, and the British, which is still the global leader in financial services. What globalization did was turn the world into one giant marketplace for goods and services, as well as making them more affordable, which is why you see poor people in Africa or people living in the Gaza strips living having access to the property of smartphones. Nations don't just fight wars with guns and rockets, they fight with war using culture, pushing forward their narrative, rightly or wrongly, that they should influence their regions, such as the Russians, Chinese, Iranians, and India to a lesser extent wanting to be more influential over the American system. They want to have their own system rather than the American one. What these nations want is to be free of American influence, be free of Western influence, and pursue geopolitics and politics which they believe, rightly or wrongly, will be better off without being influenced by the United States of America. For people listening to this who are curious about what international world would look like if the United States dismantled its navy, permanently withdrew from geopolitics, would see a world very reminiscent of the 19th century. For Europe, due to its declining demographics and within the regions, the dominant powers would be the French and the English. In the Far East, it would be China, India, and Japan, though to a lesser extent for the nation due to its demographic decline, particularly Japan and China, not to be as influential because at the moment in Japan, there's more people, adults in diapers than newborn babies in diapers. As for Africa, my money would be on Nigeria and South Africa. And as for North America, that would still be the United States. It's a continental nation like India and China, and they will most likely be very influential in the world. Though whether they will be active, it just depends on American domestic politics. The Middle East would have to be Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Israel to a lesser extent, because Turkey and Israel are more likely to make arrangements to carve up their interests within the region. However, Turkey and Greece could potentially go to war over border conflicts in the Aegean Sea, over the Greek and Turkish islands, and who actually has which claim to which territory. In 2017, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau declared Canada to be the first post national state. This means he does not see a landmass that any people living there have a claim to that land, or that the national identity is a genuine belief. What we consider nationhood was created in the aftermath of the French Revolution in 1789, because the people in France who identified as French were predominantly the intellectual classes, that's the professors, that's the intellectuals, and people living in cities who were around about 20% of the French population at that time. Therefore, to create unity in the new French Republic and later the First French Empire was to create a nation state with one particular ethnic group or people, beliefs, and similar ideologies, and spoken language being the predominant language and belief, and also people having an understanding of the nation's actual history as well. The nation state were created because the predominant method of ruling a landmass and dominate one particular area, one ethnic group, due to it being the most straightforward method to actually govern a nation, to govern a state. With empires typically made of multiple ethnic groups, one ethnic group ruling a nation state is far more easier to manage. The reason this attitude of not identifying with a nation's history is making the West have perpetual crises is that if you do not believe in your nation, believe it is as its own right to exist, or believe in its identity, then no political leader, even its people, fight to protect it. Using the example and analogy by the historian David Starkey and Edward Gibbon, the Roman Empire did not fall to armies or to famine, but due to people no longer caring if it existed or if it was destroyed. It did not fall into a cataclysm, instead, it died in a whimper because Roman people no longer cared. Suppose that the Western people no longer care about their cultural legacy and are unwilling to share their national story and care about its history and its culture. In that case, it won't be too long before it falls itself as perpetual crisis after crisis, because, like Rome, its peoples are no longer interested in maintaining their civilization. Uh, when the Roman Empire finally collapsed in 476 AD, from then until 1945, Europe was in a state of perpetual wars, with either internal or externally, with its neighbours, with kingdoms fighting for dominance, which lasted 1,469 years, which is sort of 1.5 millennium. These wars and people reading who are people who are listening to this who are descent of European descent, either by culture or by genetics, our grandfathers or even parents lived through two world wars in the 20th century. They are descendants of multiple wars stretching all the way back to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The legacy of violence and destruction has traumatized Western Europeans and the Western psyche, both physically, politically, with the nations that are part of the West no longer interested in engaging in international politics and geopolitics the way they used to before 1945. The reason why this is leading the West into perpetual crisis is that collectively, in our national memories, we have had enough of war and violence, are no longer willing to make decisions for our security, that have instead outsourced it to the United States of America that doesn't have the same millennia worth of trauma to deal with. However, it must be highlighted that the United States has had enough of foreign wars itself and conflicts, with presidents since 1992, with the election of Bill Clinton, becoming increasingly isolationist and reactionary. The United States are reacting to two problems, not actually fixing problems. That's why they're going from crisis to crisis to crisis, is due to the lack of American leadership and the lack of any other Western powers willing to actually stand accountable, to actually take action, because they've outsourced everything. They've outsourced their foreign policy, and they no longer actually believe that their nation state, that their nation culture has the right to exist. They don't see it as special anymore, particularly nations part of the Anglo-Saxon speaking world or the Anglosphere. I hope you all found this episode interesting and informative. Please don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to reach out to me, best place is either on Substack or on Medium. The content on there is still accessible, it's free, and I also have access to the chat community as well. Thank you for listening, and hope peace out. Yeah.